Welcome in everyone to the Larsonland podcast. I'm your host, Sawyer Hill, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dylan Bradshaw. We come in here every single week and talk about all things involving the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Young Money Kyle Larson. Boring race at Atlanta, Dylan. I fell asleep halfway through stage two. I woke up just in time for Larson to get wrecked by Almirola and for him, the number 10 car, to ruin our race yet again. I think that's the third time this season that Almirola has cost Larson a win in one fashion or another. But what's your overall takeaways from the race? Because for me, not really much to talk about. Single file most of the race, and just the type of racing absolutely blows. Just can't stand watching it anymore.
Yeah, stage one and two, absolute snooze fest. But I mean, super speedway style racing, it's you typically get that. Stage three, we started to see, a little bit of guys passing here and there. It wasn't as bad stage one and two, but yeah, man, Almirola blew a tire on lap 209 while leading. I mean, Larson was looking good. He was in second there. Almirola had 72 laps on the tires. I mean, immediately when he was out there, I was just like, something's bound to happen. His tires are old, and it's just not a good situation. But yeah, man, just another week ruined. We're up front. Finished with a DNF. It just sucks, dude. Like, and Larson, he's getting better on these super speedway tracks. I mean, Daytona up front had the chance to win, got caught up. Here got caught up. I mean, he's improving during the race, but it's just always something happening that just puts him out of it late. Ends up not finishing the race at all. So we're still sitting 32nd in points, though. So that's always a positive. After that penalty, we're just absolutely brutal in points. We're still waiting on the appeal. We did appeal the penalty, so we're waiting on word on that. But as far as points go with Hendrick, it's not looking good. So we're pretty much trophy hunting for the rest of the season. We need a win to be in. So yeah, points aren't looking so hot.
Yeah, and we talk about that a little bit. You look at like William Byron, his situation, already winning two races. I think having two wins, 5 playoff points each for a win, and then I think he's won like three stages on top of that. So he would have had 13 playoff points, and with the 10 being taken away from the Louver penalty, he's only sitting at three now. And Larson at -9 playoff points. Even if he wins two races, he's basically going to have nothing at this point. So. Huge penalty. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but I mean, just Joey Logano able to pick up the win at Atlanta. The Fords were dominant. We saw that in qualifying. The top 8 spots were occupied by Fords. Larson was the first non-Ford in ninth. Just a crazy to see that big of a difference. I mean, you think, we got the same package at Atlanta that we're running at, Daytona and Talladega, where we see the Chevrolets kind of be faster in qualifying, and then we go to a track like Atlanta and it's like nobody can touch the Fords. And it was like that for the majority of the race too. Those three Penske cars were at the front of the field all the way up until I think Ryan Blaney had a penalty at one point.
Yeah, I think he had a speeding penalty that sent him back, but
Yeah, and the
they were
pit
just
road crazy too. I mean,
yeah, yeah, that
just
is crazy.
insane.
Like green flag stop,
Classic.
and you're down 2 laps.
Yeah, classic NASCAR move to implement a brand new pit road and then not even have a practice session to even practice that. Tons of penalties on pit road, guys missing the pit road entry, just crazy stuff that should be avoided, and it looks stupid. I mean, it makes our sport look stupid every single week when we have stuff like this consistently going on. There should be a practice session. All we need to do is have, we every week we have 20-minute practice sessions for each group or whatever it is. They could do a 20-minute practice session for all 36 cars and they could solve that problem. They could not even have a practice session, just let the guys go and try out pit road entry, a couple times. If that's what they want to do, fine, but don't put them out there in a 400-mile race doing green flag pit stops on a pit road entry that nobody's ever seen or tried or done before. Makes no sense.
Yeah, as we see, not much NASCAR does makes too much sense. But yeah, a lot of people are frustrated with the whole practice thing. Tony Stewart and Clint Boyer, they were kind of talking about it. It was either before the race or during the race, but Tony Stewart said from an owner standpoint, they don't like to do the practice because it costs so much money, like with the hotels and the equipment, getting more equipment, rental cars. It's just logistically not very good for owners. But I mean, you got to have practice. I think the stupidest case is we've talked about it, the Daytona 500. I mean, you're just sending those guys out there with no practice after an entire offseason, biggest race of the year, and you're just sending out there to qualify. I mean, it
Yeah.
just really makes no sense. Yeah, like you said, that would make the most sense. I mean, you're introducing a new pit stop or pit road sequence or whatever. Just let them run through that. Just make a
Yeah.
few pass throughs, get them used to it. They don't got to run a whole hour long session on for at Atlanta. I mean, just let the guys get used to it.
Absolutely. And we talk about, practice session or don't have a practice session. I'm fine if they don't want to have I mean, obviously for a race like that, they need to have practice for that scenario, but if they don't want to have practice and don't want to have a session, then don't do qualifying. Don't have a qualifying session either. Just line them up by the metric, start them that way like they did in Larson's championship year. I know Kyle's a huge advocate for that too because it allows guys not to, like you said, it cuts down on the travel costs for the teams. They don't have to be out there for 3 days. They can go out there a day before or on race day and show up and run what they got. I mean, I'm not. I don't love that, but it makes more sense than what we have this weekend, where you show up and you make one lap in single car qualifying, and then you wait and race the next day. It's like just start them by the metric, especially on a speedway like that where it's that type of racing. Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. It does not matter where you start. It really doesn't. I mean, Kyle was outside of the top 10 the majority of the race. He was, in the mid teens the majority of the race, and all it took was one little sequence going a different way, and he was up inside the top 5 there at the end in contention to potentially win the race if he wasn't caught up in that incident. So, track position doesn't matter on these super speedway races, and having qualifying is basically pointless, especially if we're not even going to have practice.
Yeah, I mean, not even Cup. I saw a lot of, truck and Xfinity drivers complaining. I mean, those are obviously smaller teams. They're not making as much. They sent them out there on Friday to get the qualifying done. Xfinity and truck, they're racing Saturday. They can't just fit that in, and it ends up raining out anyway. So they wasted all that money going out there to qualify 1, 2 laps, whatever it is, on Friday, and they don't even get to race it. So it's just money down the drain, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, the rain's coming, so why don't you just set it up properly on Saturday to, cut costs so these teams don't have to spend so much money to do nothing.
Yep. I mean, I totally agree with you, and it always seems like it's a backwards double standard with NASCAR. I hate to be a little bit negative on today's podcast, but it's like, there's so many things going on in the sport that just don't make sense, and I think that there a discussion needs to be had about it. We can't just not talk about the stupid stuff we see. I mean, what kind of moving on to more stupid stuff, that the penalty that was handed out to Hendrick on Tuesday, outrageous. I mean, 100 points for each team, and driver. Minus Chase Elliott, he's going to actually benefit from this this penalty in a weird way. I would assume if he's granted his waiver, but 10 playoff points for each driver. For all 4 crew chiefs suspended for 4 races and fined $100,000 each. What is going to probably go down as one of the largest fines in NASCAR history for a single team. I think it's all excessive, Dylan. I mean, I'll play a clip in a little bit here. Chad Knaus had some comments about, or when he was asked about the penalties that were given out, and it's just like, what are they supposed to do? The parts don't fit, and they have to put them on the car. They have no other choice.
Yeah, and I think the thing that baffles me the most is they inspected the cars before the practice session, voluntary inspection, and then 35 minutes after opening the garage, they did that. And then that was completely before on-track activity, before they cars were even rolled out. And then they did the practice session, and then NASCAR says, "Okay, we're 4 hours later with no communication throughout the whole sequence of events. We're just going to confiscate your louvers and look them over, and then obviously penalize." But I mean, if you're doing inspection and then they're illegal, then why are you going to let them run practice with it? And then they don't even run the race. They don't qualify with it. That's what I don't understand either. They just completely dropped the hammer. I mean, people want to say the precedent was set with RFK last year. They ran the race with those illegal parts. They didn't. It wasn't like this where they didn't even have any meaningful things. I mean, if they want to negate their practice results, then so be it. I didn't know practice was a points race all of a sudden, but I think that is the craziest thing to me. I mean, they didn't race at all, and then all that time in between, and then 4 hours later, you're going to confiscate them and say they're illegal. I mean, it's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and play the clip and let's listen to what Chad Canals had to say about this when he was asked on Friday.
All is. I think it's a terrible situation, not only for us but the industry. To be quite honest with you, I think that's what I dislike the most. It's just it's ugly. We shouldn't be in this situation, and it's really unfortunate that we are because it doesn't help anybody.
Because the parts aren't fitting, and that there's an issue. What do you mean when you talk about terrible situation? What is it about the situation?
We as a company are, and we in the garage, every one of these teams here are being held accountable to put their car up there to go through inspection and perform at the level they need to. Like, the teams are being held accountable for doing that. Nobody is holding the single source providers accountable at the level that they need to be to give us the parts that we need. Now that goes through NASCAR's distribution center and NASCAR's approval process to get those parts, and we're not getting the right parts.
So, I mean, the parts aren't coming from the suppliers fitting to the specs that they're supposed to be to go on the cars. And obviously NASCAR is not putting their foot down and holding any of the single source part suppliers accountable for anything. It's all apparently on the teams, Dylan. What's the solution to this? Because I don't think it's fair for the suppliers to not have any accountability for what goes on in the parts that are supplied, especially when a whole team gets parts that are unacceptable and don't fit to specs, and the team has to make a change to just get it on the car and get the car to the track.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the solution is. I mean, there needs to be a standard set. I mean, with these next gen cars, everything has to be even. Everyone has to have these single parts sourced from everyone. But I think the other thing too is it wasn't just Hendrick. I mean, it was colleague Justin Haley. He got the hammer thrown at him as well. So it's not just Hendrick doing this, and they're manipulating it to try to get a competitive advantage. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to fit, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know what they can do to, I guess, like you said, just look for other vendors that could supply the part. I'm not sure the steps they would take there, but I mean, yeah, like you said, the teams, they gotta get the parts on, get the car to the track, and if they don't fit, then I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I see the frustration in like Chad Canales' voice as he's talking about it, because it's like, what are they supposed to do? I mean, are they gonna just show up and with parts that don't fit on the car? I mean, it's like, it's stupid to even, I guess, call NASCAR. What are you gonna do? Call NASCAR and tell them, hey, the parts don't fit on the car. You gotta send us some new louvers. Like, I mean, they shouldn't. If we're gonna run a spec series where everybody has the same stuff, then NASCAR needs to make sure everybody has the same stuff. They should never get in this scenario. Obviously, there's not 100% transparency on NASCAR's end, or we don't know the processes of how the teams get the parts and what NASCAR inspects and doesn't inspect before it gets to the teams. But I mean, if Hendrick Motorsports is being 100% honest about this deal, it's like, why is this even happening? I mean, this should not even be a topic of conversation if this is actually what's happening. They're getting parts that don't even fit on the cars. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's like we talk about this stuff and it's like we're going back in time, like the sport's going backwards. We're not getting better with the things that we're doing. It's frustrating to even talk about, and obviously has to be frustrating for Kyle as a driver, because he honestly has nothing to do with this, and that's my other big problem with this penalty is not only does it affect the teams from an owner point standing, which, if NASCAR wants to target the owner points and they want to take 100 owner points, then fine, that's on the team. But Kyle Larson had nothing to do with the louvers on this car, so taking 10 playoff points away from him as a driver and 100 points in the standings from him as well, I don't get what they benefit from that, from his perspective. I mean, because
Well,
like last year, we had a scenario where there was a different Final Four competing for the Drivers' Championship versus the Owners' Championship. I don't know.
I mean, back to my previous point, the biggest thing for me is they didn't race with it.
Right.
That's what I don't understand. It was a practice session, They took the time to inspect it before the car even got on the track. A-OK, go out on the track, run what you have, and then you're going to confiscate them after. It just baffles me. I mean, they didn't run a race with it, and RFK, they ran the race with it last year. They didn't even get this big of a fine, I don't think. I mean, that was a lot bigger deal, I would say, and biggest fine in history. I think the previous one was Michael Waltrip in, what was it, 2013 or something like that. It was $300,000. Just completely excessive. This is like the biggest thing that's blown out of proportion. I don't know. I hope the appeal goes well, but I doubt it will.
Yeah, I have no good expectations for the appeal. I think that NASCAR is pretty much set on their decision, and I feel bad for the teams, and there's it's we're definitely in a weird time in our sport and unprecedented stuff because obviously we haven't seen this kind of deal go down before with having suppliers that are giving out parts that need to be the right deal. I mean, it's just it's definitely a tough situation for the teams and for the drivers as we spoke about. But kind of moving on to I guess the only positive news of the podcast today, Owen Larson. Another Larson in victory lane this weekend, or this week, I should say, at the Millbridge Speedway. Owen was able to pick up his first ever win on Tuesday at Millbridge in the beginner box stock class. Good race by Owen. Started sixth, came up through the field. Some early cautions that were able to get him up a couple spots. He was up to third, made a couple passes, took the lead, and then with 4 laps to go, Dylan, the caution flag came out, and in second place it was old Brexton Bush back behind him. And I know I was nervous watching. I try and watch as many of Owen's races as I can, and I was worried. I was like, maybe Brexton's quick. He's hard to hold, and I knew going on into that restart zone that Brexton was going to give Owen a big shove and try and move him out of the way. But Owen held tough and cruised on to the victory, and just an awesome race for Owen, and congratulations to him and the Larson family on the big win.
Yeah, I didn't catch it, but I watched some clips. Great job by him. Brexton, he runs all the time, so I think that's really shows how much more impressive it is to Owen. He doesn't run all the time, so it's more impressive that he gets these win against guys that are running every single week and stuff like that. But yeah, really cool. He got his first career win. Probably a more exciting race than what we just saw at Atlanta.
It was.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, congrats to him and hopefully more to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely expect more to come from Owen Larson. And I mean, just watching the race, I mean, I know I watched quite a few last year, as many as I could, and it looked like Owen just was a little bit more mature out there on the track on Tuesday night. Like, he was just running such a smooth line the entire race, and he didn't look as erratic. He was kind of just sticking to his line no matter what happened. The caution flags came out. I know he had to be nervous, with 4 to go, and the caution flag came out. Kyle even said in an interview after the race with Steve Post that he was getting a little teary-eyed with a couple laps to go before that last caution came out, and he was really proud of Owen. And Kyle joked even in the winner's circle after the race about Owen giving him a tough time after the Phoenix race, saying, Dad, what happened at Phoenix when he lost on the last restart? And he said he was going to be hard on Owen on Tuesday at Millbridge, and I guess it paid off because Owen showed up, and he's got as many wins this year as Dad does so far.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I just can't wait to see him back on dirt. It's been way too long. When is the next scheduled race? Because Tulare got canceled. That was supposed to be the 21st, but that got canceled due to rain. But what is the next race on schedule for him?
The next race that is confirmed on the schedule for Kyle Larson on dirt is in the late model at the Volunteer Speedway for the Kyle Larson late model challenge right before the Bristol Dirt weekend. That's April 6th, I think it is, that that event is going to take place. I know there's some other stuff that I guess always could potentially pop up before then. That's still 2 weeks out at this point. So Hopefully we get to see something else before that. But like you spoke about, Tulare canceled for Tuesday night. Huge bummer for that event. I know a lot of people were looking forward to that one, especially the California race fans. I know some people that were planning on flying out there and going to the race, and just sucks. But now the high limit sprint car series will kick off at the Lakeside Speedway on April 11th, and that will be the first points paying event. $50,000 to win out there in Kansas. I don't think that the Tulare event's going to be made up, right? I think it's a full on cancellation, and it's going to maybe we hope to see that next year.
Yeah, I believe so because it was just an exhibition race. It wasn't like an official points race. So yeah, I don't think that one's going to be made up.
Yeah, so definitely, we're hoping to see Kyle back on dirt soon. It's been way too long. The NASCAR stuff is definitely getting a little bit frustrating, especially with the penalties and the DNFs and the close ones, the second places and the fourth place, the week before in Phoenix. But we're looking forward to this weekend at COTA, the first road course race. I know that's going to be a good one. We expect all the Hendrick cars to be good there. Obviously Chase Elliott's not going to be there, but we do get to see Jordan Taylor, his first NASCAR Cup Series race, a big IMSA driver and a part of the Garage 56 program with Hendrick Motorsports and NASCAR as well. Going to be exciting to see what he can do in a Hendrick car, top equipment, great driver. Definitely have high expectations for him. We also have some other talent in the field with Jimmy Johnson, Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, a lot of stars out at COTA this coming weekend.
Yeah, it's cool to see Jimmy Johnson, like you just said, to race at COTA. They also confirmed him to run the Coke 600, so I guess that we might see him do the double duty as well with Indy 500 and Coke 600. But yeah, it's cool to get these former F1 guys in here. Jenson Button, former champion, kind of bringing their F1 audience to NASCAR and showing that they don't just turn left; they in fact do turn right on occasion at these road courses. But yeah, it's cool to see. And Jenson Button, he'll be in a Stuart Haas car. Or it's Rick Ware, but I think Stuart Haas is like helping out for it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, these guys are getting good equipment, so it sets them up for a decent chance to win. We usually see guys come in NASCAR and they're just with some low budget team with a crappy car, but I mean, they should have a pretty good chance to get in contention for the win.
Yeah, it'll be a good size up for these guys and see who the F1 guys, if they can hang in with the NASCAR boys. But I'm gonna be excited to watch that at COTA this weekend. I think William Byron is gonna be in the number 17 Xfinity car for Hendrick Motorsports on Saturday, so gonna look forward to seeing that as well. And I think that's pretty much all we had for today's show, Dylan. Unless you had anything else.
That should pretty much wrap it up. Just excited for COTA. Hopefully, we won't get another heartbreaker this week. We need to get that win in early, man. We're so close. We're always running P1, P2, and then just something happens. So hopefully we get a good qualifying spot here and nothing bad happens.
Yeah, and as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, the YouTube version of the podcast, we do have in the bottom right, this is an Almirola free zone. So, no bad luck here. We're trying to keep the bad luck away from the podcast. Hopefully, no Almirola events at COTA. He's gotten Kyle quite a few times this year. But thanks, everyone, again for tuning in and listening to the show. We'll be back again next week to talk about all things Kyle Larson, including the NASCAR Cup Series race at COTA. If you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow our podcast so you never miss a thing. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we will see you in the next episode.